I'm Eric Bowman. I'm a physician here at Phoenix Children's Sports Medicine. There's something out there called the Throwers 10. I think that's actually a pretty good program. Its focus is to try to strengthen up the muscles in the area of the shoulder and the back. Those back muscles need to be strong. So making sure you're doing some things to strengthen up the shoulder muscles. And I think the big thing on that is a lot of times people think of shoulder muscles as the big muscles. But what is important is you have the smaller rotator cuff muscles in the shoulder as well that are really there for stabilization. And so the recommendation is that you work not only those bigger muscles, but those smaller muscles as well. And so doing small weights, right, bands, that sort of thing is going to be really important to try and help to strengthen those smaller muscles. The sleeper stretch is one of those things that, yes, it can provide a little bit of some increased flexibility back there, but clinically, meaning how much you feel that effect when you're actually throwing the ball, it doesn't necessarily translate into a huge change that way. So how I usually talk about the sleeper stretch is it's definitely something you can do if it helps you to feel better, but I don't know if it's going to make a drastic difference, right? Core stabilization is something else that is extremely important, and I think a lot of times we tend to forget about the core. And the reason why the core is so important in a pitcher or a thrower in general is as you're pushing off that rubber, throwing towards home, if your core isn't strong enough to stabilize your positioning and your mechanics, as you push forward, you actually drop to the side and you end up with a sidearm type of mechanic, which we all know is actually a really bad thing because it puts a lot of stress on the shoulder and the elbow. You want to get a good foundation with your fastball and your changeup first. So if you're a 13 or 14-year-old and your mechanics with your fastball and changeup isn't good, then you shouldn't be throwing those breaking balls at that age anyways, because the problem is you'll put some increased torque on that. And so no earlier than probably 13 or 14, but just make sure you have good mechanics with all the other pitches first. So as far as activities during the off season, I think there's a couple really important things to say here. One of the biggest things is that we recommend taking an off season. The evidence is really, really strong to show that you need to take time off from throwing. Honestly, it's recommended that you play other sports, right? You do other things. Play basketball, play football, play soccer, right? We don't recommend any type of sports specialization, especially in baseball and overhead athletes, until at the earliest, high school, and in all honesty, preferably college. The actual recommendation is that you take at least 3 months per year off of all overhead throwing activity. And I know that sounds like a lot, and that sounds like it's an entire season, but we know that if you can take that time off, you're gonna be much better off, and your chances of injury are gonna go a lot lower. Having said that, during that off season, it's really important to focus on some of your other mechanical things. You want to make sure you're working on maintaining that core strength, doing a good core workout program. You want to make sure you're maintaining that upper back strength so that that shoulder blade stays nice and stabilized, right? You want to make sure that you're continuing to work on range of motion of your shoulder. Phoenix Children's is really uniquely positioned to help rehab and diagnose young baseball players for multiple reasons. First of all, we are trained and specifically dedicated to treating the young athlete. We understand that young people have different injuries, they have different problems that will come up, and so we're trained to recognize and specifically diagnose that. As far as the rehab side of it, we have a phenomenal rehab team here that does a really nice job treating young athletes. And one of the things I love about our rehab program, they are all trained to recognize and work with young athletes and to recognize the injuries that those young athletes have. One of the things I love about our rehab program is they know how to motivate young athletes. They know how to come in, have their athletes come in here, work with other athletes, really be able to just show them how to get back, get healthy, build the foundations, and then be able to move on from there, right? And so we do a really great job here at Phoenix Children's in making sure our young athletes are well cared for from diagnosis through the rehab process and ultimately getting them back onto that field and doing what they love.